guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have a fun one for you. I am going to be recreating my first ever tutorial that I uploaded here on my channel. So that is the look I'm going to be recreating in today's video. I thought it would be fun just to take a look into the past and try to recreate something that I did in 2015. Of course, I am hoping that the look comes out better. I really think my skill and my knowledge of makeup has evolved, and I also have really figured out what I like best for me, what techniques kind of work best with my eye shape and my skin and stuff like that. Some steps I am going to be tweaking just a little bit in this video just to get it to my liking. Some of the products I don't have anymore from 2015, so I'll just replace it with something similar. But most of the products I do still have, and I'm going to try to create the exact same makeup looks, of course, in hopes that it turns out better. But again, just tweaking it a little bit to my liking now in 2020. So I really hope that you guys enjoy seeing this video. I'm going to be playing the video on the screen also as we go along so you guys can see the comparison and follow along with both. Just a little backstory before we get started. I filmed my first video after school one day in December, so keep in mind that's like 3:15 p.m. and at that time in December it gets dark really early, so you guys are going to see throughout the original video I was gradually losing daylight very quickly, so it's not the greatest quality, but it's my first video ever. At the time I was so proud of it. I thought it was so awesome and I was so excited to upload it. I mean, I still am proud of it. That was like the first time that I decided to just make the jump and start my channel and really decide to pursue this. So the video is near and dear to my heart despite it being not the best quality, but I think it's also cool to keep those videos up on my channel because it really shows how much I have grown being comfortable in front of the camera and grown my equipment and my setup. But I really hope that you guys enjoy seeing this video. I hope you enjoy going down memory lane here on my channel, and if you want to see me recreate my first ever makeup tutorial, make sure to keep on watching. So as you guys saw, the first thing that I used was my Smashbox primer water. This was a step that I always swore by. If you guys have been watching me since then, or even like 2017, early 2018, primer water was something that I was head over heels for a really long time. I still do like it. This is not the same bottle that was shown in the video. I have repurchased this a couple of times since 2015, but I do really like this. I use it sometimes when I remember, but lately these past few years I've definitely been more of a Fix Plus kind of girl, or like a Catrice spray, Wet n Wild prep sprays. These past few years I've definitely branched out of just using the Smashbox primer water, but it still is a great spray and I'm excited to use it again today. Oh wow, you guys, the smell of this just takes me way back to when I first started using makeup and falling in love with makeup. It's crazy how scents do that. That is like the smell of when I first started doing makeup. Okay, so it looks like the next thing I'm doing is going in with the Too Faced Shadow Insurance to prime my eyes. And if I remember correctly, yeah, I go in with the MAC Pro Longwear Paint Pot in Soft Ochre as well. I used to love both of these products a lot. I actually don't have the Too Faced Shadow Insurance anymore. I went ahead and decluttered all of my eyeshadow primers recently because traditional eye primer is something that I have not used in years now, you guys. I fell in love with using concealer as my eye base just because I felt like it was more creamy and hydrating and just made a better base for my concealer. But one thing that I do still have is my MAC Soft Ochre Paint Pot. Again, I don't think this is the same one from the 2015 video, but I'm just gonna skip the traditional eye primer because like I said, I don't have any in my collection. And looking back, I don't know how necessary it was to put a traditional eye primer underneath something like the paint pot, but let's see how I like the paint pot. I feel like I stopped using this because I found it to be a little dry on the eyes. Oh yeah, it definitely is a little dry, probably just a little dried out from being a little old. Ooh, that is not a smooth base at all anymore. If you guys can see, a lot of it is actually just like stuck and dried on my finger. It also looks a lot more yellow than I remember. So I actually don't think I'm going to continue to use this because I do want to try to recreate this actually good. And I feel like this is not going to allow my shadows to sit nicely on top of it just because it is a little chunky and dried out at this point. But I do remember really loving this, and I use this every single day as my eye base. But I think, like I said, just to make sure I could actually recreate this tutorial accurately and how I would do my makeup today, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of the Colourpop No Filter Concealer on my lids to prime my eyes. Lucid and Lyric. Okay, so the next thing that I did was go in with the shades Lucid and Lyric from my Kat Von D Shade and Light palette to set my eyes. I used to absolutely love these two powders. I do still have the same exact Shade and Light palette here, but if you guys can see, I totally finished Lucid and Lyric. For that exact reason, I was totally obsessed with it when it came to setting down the base on my eyes. These are really nice and smooth powders for that. If you guys are looking for something that keeps your shadows on all day, makes a nice and smooth base, and keeps your base from actually creasing underneath the powder. And in the video, I'm actually going in and setting it with the Real Technique setting brush, which I still have. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do the same thing, but instead of the Kat Von D, I have this little single Makeup Revolution Bacon Blot powder that I really love to set my eyes with. It's essentially the same thing, it's just like a light banana powder, and it has a really similar formula to the Kat Von D one. All right, so now we are getting on into doing eyeshadow, and I would say compared to 2015, eyeshadow is where I have definitely most improved my overall skill and just learned like different techniques and what works best with my eye shape instead of like following exactly what everyone else is doing. In 2015, I really didn't know what worked best for me. I wasn't playing around a ton. I kind of would just watch a tutorial and follow it to a T, not knowing that what worked for someone else might not work for me. So I feel like over the years, I definitely have improved my eyeshadow a lot. And I still do have my Makeup Geek shadows that you guys are seeing right here. I have gotten a couple of new ones since then, but honestly, you guys, I have not touched these in so long. So I'm really interested to dip back into these. So it looks like in the video, the first shade that I went in with is the shade Creme Brulee, which was everyone's favorite transition shade back in the day. One thing that I see myself doing here that I used to do a lot looking back is using a little bit too small of a brush for that initial transition shade, not giving me enough color in the crease. I believe the brush that I used in the video was like a MAC 217. Today I'm gonna go in with the Alamod Fluffy brush. I believe this is just like their crease brush, and I'm going to dip into Creme Brulee and start really fluffing this and packing it in the crease. For my particular eye shape, I really like a more exaggerated transition, and I like to take it up a little bit higher than actually in my crease because I do have hooded eyes. When I look up, a lot of my lid is hidden, if you guys can see, when I totally relax my eyes and look straight. So taking the transition up higher kind of allows me to fake the look of a higher crease, ultimately faking the look of a bigger lid and just a bigger eye space at the end of everything. And another thing that I do now that I didn't always do then is take the same exact transition shade just on a little bit more of a concentrated brush and run that just a little bit lower directly in the crease just to fill in any blank spaces. You guys are gonna see a little bit later in my first tutorial that I left just like a lot of blank spaces when doing my eyeshadow. I didn't take things like far enough or high enough or really take the time to blend the colors together. So I just want to make sure that I'm taking some time on that now. So moving on, the next shade that I'm taking is the shade Bitten, and it looks like I'm just going ahead and packing that all over my lid, starting at the outer corner and going in. This isn't something that I would typically go in right away. I would probably do like an outer corner first nowadays, but I'm gonna follow what I did in 2016, just try to make it like better and make it work. I do still have the shade Bitten. I'm just gonna go in and apply this on the Sigma E59 wide shader brush. I think in the video I was using a little bit of a smaller shader brush, which I can't seem to find. This should work, and I'm just going to start packing the color from the outer corner going all the way across the lid. I'm actually gonna switch brushes to the medium angled shader, their E70, just because I feel like it's a little bit less dense and will pick up more color. I feel like this is one of those looks that is so scary and looks horrible until it's totally done. This shade has a lot of fallout too. Okay, so I have Bitten packed all over my lid. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. So on the screen, I wrote that I'm using Makeup Geek Cocoa Bear, which was another one of my favorite warm brown shades. And it looks like I'm running this in between the crease to blend those two shades together, which is good. I thought I didn't do this. Maybe I just didn't do it well enough, but let's go ahead and see how it looks today. And then I'm going in and applying more Bitten on my lid to intensify the shade. I have to say, Bitten looks a lot more pigmented in this video than it is pulling on my lids right now. I don't know if that's because it is maybe a little bit older at this point and has lost some of its like nice pigmentation, or maybe I'm just using the wrong brush, but I'm going to dip into some Cocoa Bear and start running that into the crease. I feel like this is really going to tie the look together. And then just like in the video, re-intensifying my lid with more of the shade Bitten. So next I'm cleaning up the edge of my lid with some Q-tips, and I said you could leave the shadow like this if you don't like glitter. Oh yes, I do go ahead and apply glitter, which I was just thinking in my head, this look could definitely use a little shimmer or something, so I'm excited about that. But I'm just gonna go in with a little bit of makeup remover and sharpen the edge of the shadow. I used to do this every single day when I would do eyeshadow. I don't typically do this anymore. I'll usually just go in and kind of soften the edge with some concealer, but 2015 tells me to do this, so that's what I'm gonna do. Next, for the center of my lid, I went in with the shade Colourpop Birthday Girl, which I am so excited about because this look could definitely use some dimension and some glitter. The Colourpop Supershock shadows have always been some of my favorites to put on my lid. They have such an intense glittery formula that are just so easy to work with, and they make working with glitter like really foolproof. So I still have the Birthday Girl shadow right here. This used to be one of my absolute favorite lid shades ever, and it is still really creamy feeling. So I'm just gonna go ahead and apply that on the center of my eye, hoping to add a little bit of dimension to this look. I noticed in the video that I kept this really just on the center part of my eye, but when I'm doing a halo eye now for my eye shape, I kind of like to blend it out a little bit like that, almost covering up a nice chunk of the lid, if you guys can see. And one thing now that I'm gonna do that I didn't do in the original tutorial is go in with Bitten on a little bit of a smaller brush and re-intensify it on the outer and inner corners. And I'm also going to touch up the matte shades in my crease. This was a step that I totally skipped over back in 2015, and I feel like this makes the biggest difference in the intensity of the matte shades, because when you're kind of tapping your eye, you're taking off that top layer of the shadow. So this is going to re-intensify it. And I've definitely discovered that doing a halo eye is kind of like a back and forth process. You do more matte, you reapply the lid shade, and you repeat that just until it looks how you would like it to look. I love how the eyes are starting to look. I think they are really starting to come together. So after I finish up the eyes in this video, the next thing that I go ahead and do is apply my Maybelline Baby Skin Primer to my face, which, if you guys remember the Baby Skin Primer, that was like one of the first primers that might have ever came out, at least one of the first primers that I've ever tried. But I no longer have that in my collection, but I do have the Maybelline Master Prime by Face Studio Primer and Base Blur and Pore Minimize. This is essentially the same thing, kind of like that Smashbox photo finish, clear silicone-y texture to it. These types of primers are really going to smooth out the pores. If you guys can see, they're literally just all the same type of clear primer. They're really just going to smooth out the pores and make a nice soft base for your foundation. Hence, I believe that's why the first one was called Baby Skin, to make your skin so soft and poreless that you look like you have the face of a baby. But I'm not even sure that they make Baby Skin Primer anymore. If you guys know if they do, definitely let me know. This one, if anything, I feel like is a little better just because it has a little bit more of a thin formula. It's not as heavy on the skin. With these types of primers, they can tend to be a little bit like slippy and slidey if you apply your foundation too quickly. So I'm going to let it sit for a while, and I actually knew that back in 2015 as well, because it looks like I go ahead and move on to applying some false lashes. I don't think I'm gonna put on falsies today just because I'm not a huge falsie person. Even with more dramatic eye looks like this, I typically just love to do some mascara. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop on some mascara, and then I will be back to continue the tutorial. Alright you guys, so my mascara is done, and it looks like after I apply my falsies, I go ahead and do lower lash mascara, which is strange because that's typically something I wouldn't do unless my base is done. I think what I did was kind of edit this a little bit out of order to do all of the eyes first and then go ahead and apply my base afterwards. So I'm going to do this more logically, how I would do my makeup now, and I'm going to go ahead and start my base. But what I'm gonna do first is go ahead and do my eyebrows, because back in 2015 I would do my eyebrows last, or I always did them off camera. I did not do them in this video. So now it would make sense for me in my updated makeup routine to go ahead and do my eyebrows now, just to really tie the eyeshadow together, just so I don't go ahead and look crazy for the rest of this video. So I'm going to go ahead and do my brows. I'm going to be using the Fenty Beauty Brow MVP in the shade medium brown. Okay, so those are the eyebrows on. I'm pretty happy with them. They might look a little bit intense, but I'm gonna wait until I finish the rest of my face. One of the things I feel like I definitely did back in 2015 was underfill my eyebrows, especially when it came to doing a look like this. I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly use this white shade in my brow powder to highlight my brow bone. But as I was saying, I feel like I always underfilled my brows back in 2015, especially when it came to doing something a little bit more glam and structured like this particular eye look. I kind of would just quickly run my brow pencil through and it didn't look finished, and my brows would just look weird. So I'm really excited to see how this look comes together with more of a structured brow that I like to do. For my foundation, it looks like I am mixing together the Maybelline Matte and Poreless and the CoverGirl Outlast foundation. Whoa, that foundation is such a throwback, and I remember it just being way too dark for me. Like, I had no idea how to pick my foundation shade back in 2015, but I mixed those two together, which looking back was probably a really heavy and matte combination, just because both of those foundations are like really full coverage and really matte and powdery looking on the skin. So I don't have the CoverGirl one anymore, so I'm just going to go in with the Matte and Poreless alone, and I am applying it here with a kabuki brush, which lately I have been preferring using a sponge. I just think it makes foundation look a little bit more like it's one with your skin, whereas applying it with a brush, I almost feel like the foundation sits on top of the skin. So especially with something a little bit more matte and powdery like this, I'm going to use a sponge to really get that into the skin. So I'm just going to dot this all over the face. I really still do like this foundation. I think this color is still good for me. This is the shade 120 Classic Ivory, just like a nice neutral shade. Next up, I'm doing concealer, and I'm using the MAC Pro Longwear Concealer. This was my favorite concealer ever, and I am drawing ginormous triangles underneath my eyes. This concealer was so full coverage, and I always used way too much of it, and it was also a little light for me looking back on this video as well. I actually don't have this concealer anymore. Oh my god, I keep getting so close to the camera. I actually don't have this concealer anymore, so let's see what I could use in place of it. When I think of the MAC Pro Longwear Concealer, I think of a thin yet still very full coverage formula, and the Maybelline Master Conceal is actually a really great dupe for the MAC concealer. This one is in the shade 20 Light, and this is really close and similar in formula. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this and apply it directly underneath my eyes. I'm not going to do the giant triangles like I did in 2015. I still do like a lot of concealer, but I'm just going to do a little bit less under the eye than that. And also I stopped doing concealer in the middle of my brows. Instead, I like to focus the concealer on my chin to balance out the highlight. And I also like to apply some right down the bridge of my nose to help with my nose contour. To blend that out, in the original tutorial, I used the Morphe G2 brush, but I'm just not really into blending out my concealer with brushes anymore. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use the same sponge that I used for my foundation. That concealer is definitely pretty, but I feel like it's not as full coverage as I remember it being, and it's definitely not as full coverage as I go in the original video. So I think I'm just going to take a little bit of my Colourpop No Filter concealer. These concealers have some really nice coverage. This one is in the shade Light 16, which is perfect for me in the winter time. And I'm just going to add a little bit more of that on top of the Maybelline concealer, just for some more coverage and brightness. To set that concealer down, I went in with the Laura Mercier Translucent Loose Powder. This powder used to be my absolute favorite powder. This is amazing for those of you that have really, really oily skin. I don't use this a ton now because I prefer something a little bit more lightly milled and not as oil controlling, but I'm gonna go ahead and use it today for the purpose of this video, and I used it on a Real Techniques setting brush. In the video, it seems that I only concentrate the tiny brush under my eyes, but the past few years, I really like to take some extra time with that tiny brush to set anywhere that I put that concealer, just because I feel like it helps it really stay in place a lot longer. So I'm just going to also pack the concealer around my nose and on my chin and around my eyebrows with this tiny brush. And then I'm going to lightly dust some powder on the rest of my face. Nowadays, I definitely don't use nearly as much powder as I used to. I'm not as oily. I've also kind of gotten down pat a foundation routine that's pretty long lasting, and also with this matte and poreless foundation, you just don't need a lot of powder because it does kind of have a powdery finish to it already. The next thing that I'm going in and doing is applying some bronzer, and I remember I used to love getting the mini Chocolate Soleil bronzers as like perks from Sephora or like free samples, and I used to go through so many of those little Chocolate Soleil bronzers in like the mini black packaging, but I have since purchased the full size of the Chocolate Soleil. I have not used this to bronze my skin in a really long time, so I'm curious to see how I'm still going to like this. If I remember correctly, it's like a really nice neutral bronzer, so I think I'm going to like it. It definitely is more of a subtle bronzer. I would almost say it kind of leans a little bit like a contour, or I don't know if that's just because nowadays I'm used to like a really warm tone bronzer. So it looks like the next thing that I go ahead and do is contour my face with the Kat Von D Shade and Light palette. I actually haven't contoured my face in a really long time. Honestly, if I'm evolving this look into what I would wear now in 2020, I don't think I would contour, especially in combination with the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer, just because it is already a little bit more cool tone than I would typically go for. I think it is kind of giving me a little bit of that contoured effect. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and skip contour, but the next thing that I go ahead and do is go in with blush, and I used my favorite blush ever at the time, which was the Benefit Box blush in the shade Dallas. Unfortunately, I broke this about a year ago and I haven't had it in my collection, so I'm just going to go in with some of this really pretty Milani blush in the shade Berry Amore. This is their baked blush, and it's kind of close to Dallas. It has a little bit more of that like mauve-y cool tone finish. It is pretty similar to the Dallas blush. And lastly, for highlighter, I went in with the classic Becca and Jaclyn Hill Champagne Pop highlighter. This I still have, and I'm excited to use because I haven't used this in a while, so I'm excited to see how it looks. In the video, it looks like I apply it on the tops of my cheekbones like I normally would, of course. Getting really close to the camera again, as you guys can see. Ooh, this is really pretty and looks really nice with this eye look, so that was a good choice of me back in 2015. In the video, it doesn't look like I applied the highlighter anywhere else besides my cheekbones, but you guys know me, I love a good nose highlight, so I am going to go ahead and take this down the bridge of my nose today. Back in the day, I never used to complete an eye look with any shadow under my eye. I was always scared of looking raccoonish or just taking it too far down, and I didn't put any eyeshadow under my eye in this holiday tutorial back in 2015, and looking back, it definitely needed it. It's just a little bit too top heavy to go without any shadow on the lower lash line. So I'm going to go ahead with the shade Bitten just on a little smudger brush and smudge that underneath the lower lash line. I feel like this is really what the look needs to tie it all together. And then to smudge it out, I'm going to take a mixture of creme brulee and cocoa bear, tap off the excess, and then just start smoking out the burgundy just to drag it down a little bit lower. And then the last thing that I did for shadow was take some of MAC Nylon, which was my favorite inner corner highlight of all time, and apply that on the inner corners of my eyes. Another thing that I didn't do back in 2015 that is crucial for me now is some Fix Plus. So before I go ahead and apply my lower lashes, I'm just going to spray Fix Plus on my face to really meld all those powders into the skin, especially with the combination of the Matte and Poreless foundation and the Laura Mercier powder. Both are feeling a little bit dry and heavy on my skin right now, so I'm hoping that some Fix Plus will help. I finished off this makeup tutorial with two options. The first one is the NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Tres Leches. This, I think it looked pretty. I don't know that this is something that I would pick now. I think it just lacks a little bit of dimension, or maybe I would have to line my lips first. It was a pretty option, but I don't know that I would pick it. And then the next lip option that I chose was the MAC lipstick in the shade Diva, which I definitely think is the better of the two. I love that really monochromatic, like burgundy on burgundy type of look, but I don't know if it would be my first choice again nowadays. So I'm gonna show you guys what I would pair with this eye look now. You guys know me, I think what would look best with this look is like a really nice nude shade, something a little bit more on the peachy side to complement the warm tones that are kind of coming off of this burgundy and out of those browns. So I'm going to start off by lining my lips with the House Laboratories liner in the shade Endpoint. And then of course I'm going to fill my lips in with my favorite nude ever, which is Colourpop What's Your Sign. Okay, yeah, I really love this. I definitely think this is better than either of the two options that I had originally in 2015. Like I said, if I were to pick out of the two, I think I would go with the monochromatic burgundy on burgundy, but just to tone it down a little and to make it more modern how I would do it now, I would definitely do a light peachy nude like What's Your Sign. All right, you guys, so that is the completed look. That is my first ever makeup tutorial here on my channel, Recreated. I really hope that you guys enjoyed. I had a lot of fun putting this together. I really love how the look turned out, and I love how it's just like a modernized and evolved version of my first ever tutorial. I definitely would feel comfortable wearing this out. I actually have to run right now, so I feel pretty and put together, and I had a lot of fun reminiscing. I had a lot of fun using some products that I haven't used in a long time, and I really enjoyed putting this look together for you guys. If you enjoyed seeing this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel before you leave. I would love to have you guys here as part of my little YouTube fam. If you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos, click that notification bell down below and you will get notified every single time that I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and of course, I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.